Good afternoon. This is another tropical update on Major Hurricane Erin for Saturday afternoon, the 16th of August, 2025. As always, my thoughts in this video are mine alone, and making any decisions regarding Erin, please consult the National Hurricane Center and your local weather offices for more information. Now, if you haven't been here before and you do find these updates on Major Hurricane Erin very helpful, informative, life-saving, as well as detailed, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon to get daily tropical weather updates and live coverage on any landfalling hurricane or tropical storm if we get one this hurricane season. Hit that like button and share this video with their family and friends on social media. So now, when looking at the very latest visible satellite imagery here, northwest or northeast of Puerto Rico, we can clearly see a very intense eye wall that has remained in place. However, most recently, we are starting to see early signs of an eye wall replacement cycle where the outer eye wall develops and robs in the inner eye, helping to weaken the winds, but also expanding the wind field a little bit because a lot of that conservation angular momentum is now being spread apart from the internal portion of the storm. So instead of the primary eye wall having the strongest winds, that maximum wind now is in the secondary eye wall as well. And so it distributes the energy a little bit. But sometimes once an eye wall replacement cycle completes fast enough while in a very favorable environment, these hurricanes could go flying very fast and could re-intensify explosively on the other side. So that's what we'll be watching for very closely once this eye wall replacement cycle does complete, which should take anywhere between 6 to 12 hours. So now, when looking at the Doppler radar site from Puerto Rico, we can clearly see that while the inner eye is extremely vigorous and intense in recent frames, especially how you can see a lot more orange and red showing up on the echoes, we're beginning to see again that secondary eye wall that might be beginning to form here, setting the stage for that eye wall replacement cycle. But if this becomes the more dominant one, which is very rare, which what we call a inward forming eye wall, contracting outward to the outer eye walls, sometimes these could happen very fast and are not really noticeable. This could actually help the hurricane intensify even further from where it's at right now. So that is something to also keep in mind going forward. Whether or not a classic eye wall replacement cycle is occurring or an inward eye wall replacement cycle may be occurring. But either way, this is an exceptionally dangerous hurricane with 160 mile an hour winds and pressures that are probably down to about 915 millibars, 915. So now the big question really remains here is how close will this get to the eastern seaboard of the United States in the coming days? Well, when looking at the latest European model here, well, this is the 0Z model from last night because we want to compare the next couple of runs, and you will be very shocked at seeing a new track that the European model shows here with Erin. And again, Erin is still moving slightly north of due west right now, not gaining a whole lot of latitude. So we could still see some big shifts in our track forecast. So this is basically just over 5 days out. This is for Thursday early morning on the 21st of August. If we look at the next few model runs, look at this. We start seeing shifts a little bit to the west, and especially in its 12Z counterpart, we are seeing a big shift to the west now. So this could bring tropical storm force winds. No, those are actually tropical storm force winds over Cape Hatteras in North Carolina, perhaps in Virginia. So this is a very, very close call here with Hurricane Erin, as it remains a formidable hurricane here, regardless of how strong it is on the Euro. We have some other intensity forecasts that I want to show you, but boy, oh boy, this is much, much closer than what we were dealing with yesterday. In fact, yesterday's 12Z run was a little further, and this was kind of going back and forth a little bit, but now recently, this is a whole lot further to the west. Now, looking at the icon model here really quickly, again, showing that, again, a close call here to the eastern seaboard now looks a bit more likely, given that the icon model has been an outlier thus far, with it being most further west. Now, looking again at the Euro, showing us the difference here. Boy, this is right where the icon has it. And this is not what we want to hear when looking at the possibility here of near coast impacts, especially with a hurricane that is this large. Now, regardless of how close to the eastern seaboard Erin actually gets, there is going to be exceptional, extreme surf with this by all means. Looking at the latest Euro here at the maximum individual wave height over the next 30 hours, you can see maximum individual wave heights here between 35 to 45 feet, which is extremely, extremely large here. And actually, specifically, it is 60 feet here on this map, which is pretty alarming to say the least. Now, putting this into motion, you could see how these waves get bigger and bigger and bigger because the wind field is going to expand while the hurricane remains extremely intense and compact, rather compact, but it gets broader and broader with time. So over the next 90 hours, we end up seeing maximum individual wave heights here of over 75 to 90 feet, according to the Euro. And look at the surf here along the Florida coast, the North Carolina, South Carolina coast. That surf is going to come up extremely quickly throughout the day on Tuesday into Wednesday and then into Thursday here. We're looking at that surf maximizing. But look at here, especially over Cape Hatteras, where we could see some breakers here approaching 50 to 70 feet perhaps. This is mind-boggling large surf here, and this would cause life-threatening beach issues such as coastal flooding. Certainly, we could be looking at some minor storm surge because all of this water is moving up onto shore because of these large waves. And thirdly, we could be looking at extreme, or we will be looking at extreme, possibly unsurvivable rip currents along the coast here of Cape Hatteras as well as the Northeast. Look at this. This is a very, very big concern if you're going to the beach at all between Tuesday all the way through Thursday, even into Friday. Please do not go at all because wave heights will be anywhere. Some of the breakers with some of the sets could be approaching anywhere between 50 to 75 feet, which is enough to cause extreme injuries as well as fatalities. Do not go to the beach at all on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday because this is looking bad, including for Bermuda. Look how large the waves could be for Bermuda. Even so, the center is not going to be even affecting you all there at this given time. We're looking at surf there anywhere between 30 to 50 feet high. Now, the big question of serious concern that everybody is concerned about in this video, I'm sure, because we have seen huge tracks to the west here in recent model runs from the Euro, and I'll show you that here on the ensemble, is how much stronger will Erin get from here, given that it's going through an eyewall replacement cycle or is about to do one if it is already. So looking at the pair of hurricane models that we'll be looking at in this video is first the HAVS B, then we'll be looking at the HAVS A, then the WRF model, the HWRF, and then the HMON, which are also great models to look at. So we can see that pressures here a little on the high side, but given that we are seeing an eyewall replacement cycle beginning here, pressures will probably come up to about 930 millibars and then drop once again. I did talk to a friend about this earlier, is during an eyewall replacement cycle, your pressures can go up very quickly actually and cause some of that weakening. But once the newer outer eyewall contracts inward and becomes the more primary one, we can see explosive intensification occur after that. And that's what ends up happening here on the HAVS B model. If we go forward in time here, we get this down to about 918 to 919 millibars. Actually, it gets even, okay, I thought that was 914, but it gets very intense here with winds anywhere between 140 to perhaps 150 knots, which is equivalent of winds at the surface between about 160 to 175 miles an hour. So there could still be some additional strengthening over the course of the next 24 hours at least before we see a very gradual weakening trend, but not by much. And at this point, it's not going to matter because as we see a weakening trend, the wind field is going to expand. And you can see that here. Because this hurricane is so intense doesn't mean the wind field is large. Look what happens here as the hurricane weakens. Look at how large these tropical storm force winds here. Anything in green here is tropical storm force. Anything in purple here on the HAVS B is hurricane force. Now, when looking at our halves B model, something similar, but only a lot more intense here. And this could be an unfortunate case for Erin as it undergoes that eyewall replacement cycle and it re-intensifies on the other side. We could see a pressure still to bottom out here at about 914 to 910 millibars, which is exceptional for this hurricane. We already see a 915 millibar, probably a lot higher now in the 920s to 930s because of that eyewall replacement cycle. But once it re-intensifies, I mean, look how fast this thing got in the matter of 24 hours. We could certainly see another attempt here at this getting below the 910s perhaps in the next 24 hours at least before gradual weakening occurs. And the maximum winds here are at 140 knots, which equates to about 160 to 165 miles an hour. So this could still strengthen a little bit more. Even so, the eyewall replacement cycle might tell people that, oh, it's beginning to weaken. That's a good thing. That's internal structural changes and not vertical wind shear or any dry air getting in the way of this system. Now, after this, the system does not weaken as quick on the halves A, and it does remain a Category 4 hurricane perhaps over the next 4 days or so. And if you look very closely on the top left side of your screen, we can see Cape Hatteras right over here with tropical storm force winds touching those small land masses. So this is going to be a very close call, unfortunately. And this has shifted a lot further to the west because of what Erin has done today. It deviated just south of due west for a while, and now it's only moving towards the west-northwest at 280 degrees, not moving to the northwest yet. And we will really have to watch and wait on how soon that actually occurs, because right now, if this goes any further west, this could put the eastern seaboard at play. Now, looking at the WRF model or the H-WRF, we're seeing pressures that could bottom out again a little bit more here at 921 millibars with maximum winds here on the order of about 135 to 145 knots or about 155 to 165 miles per hour. So again, additional strengthening is possible or is likely here perhaps over the course of 24 hours. But as we move forward here, the H-WRF model does not show much weakening at all in the next 5 days. And this is still a Category 3 hurricane with 115 mile an hour winds, and tropical storm force winds here are much larger. One other model that we wanted to look at is the HMON. This has pressures even lower in theory here, down to 912 millibars with maximum winds here perhaps in the next 24 hours that could peak at about 160 knots. That would be absolutely historic by all means. Very close of being historic, only underneath Dorian and some other intense hurricanes out there in the Atlantic with a very intense inner core structure. Again, assuming that the eyewall replacement cycle completes fast enough, we could see a bout of very quick re-intensification on the other side here into a formidable hurricane. Once again, it's already formidable, but even more formidable than what it is already, perhaps. And then the hurricane begins to gradually weaken. But again, models are not in a hurry at weakening this very fast, and this will be a gradual process. Now, of course, given the fact that Erin has outpaced all forecasts with its intensity, it would not be surprising if this takes a little longer to fall apart than what our hurricane models are actually showing. Now, one other thing that I wanted to show you all in today's video is the ensemble forecast. And we're looking at last night's 0Z forecast because we're going to compare between just how much different this model ensemble is from last night to where we are at right now. So we can see there was a save and grace track, a Goldilocks track safely away from the eastern seaboard of the mid-Atlantic, and we all thought this is a good thing. There's better consistency. We could rely on this, but unfortunately today that has went the other way, and we have seen a huge shift here towards the west with the ensembles, with some of the outliers here very, very close to the eastern seaboard, bringing tropical storm force winds with winds greater than 40 to even 60 miles an hour along the Cape Hatteras coast here. Now, once again, I want to be very, very clear and thorough here, regardless of how close this gets. And the term fish storm is misleading here because a lot of people think that, oh, it's a fish storm, there won't be very many impacts. That does not mean there won't be impacts at all, because there clearly will be, as we talked about, extreme rip currents, extreme surf along the Carolina coast, as well as the Cape Hatteras coast, because when you get a growing hurricane like this with its wind field, the surf gets very, very high, and it has time to build around the hurricane's wind field. And therefore, regardless of how close this gets and or how far this gets, there is going to be extreme rip currents as well as coastal flooding, perhaps along to go with rip tides and other factors here, with maybe even some pier damage as well as harbor damage, given on how large these waves could actually end up being. So please take this very, very seriously, regardless of if there is or isn't tropical storm force winds along the coast here of Cape Hatteras. There is going to be a mighty amount of very high surf, with waves, again, anywhere between about 35 to 50 feet perhaps. Therefore, the National Hurricane Center, you can see their intensity forecast here, calling this to maintain or possibly some short-term fluctuations in intensity, either up or down. So we could still see this peaking at 165, maybe even pushing 170 miles an hour. That's probably not going to happen at this given time, given that there's an ERC. But I will tell you what, this is going to remain a Category 5 or greater. Well, there's nothing greater than a Cat 5, but this is going to remain at least at a Category 5 over the next 24 hours, maybe dipping back down to Category 4 due to that ERC that's currently imminent and happening, and then it should re-intensify thereafter for a little bit longer before we see a gradual weakening trend. But I mean gradual here, 160, 155, 150, 140, 145, 140. It's very gradual over the next 3 to 4 days, and we are still looking at a major hurricane now through the next entire 5-day forecast from the NHC. Therefore, the risk of tropical storm force winds are quite high over Bermuda until that cone of uncertainty actually shifts and we can narrow down exactly who's going to get hit. There is still a non-zero chance over portions of North Carolina, especially Cape Hatteras. Going to see potentially some tropical storm force winds. It's going to be a very close call. Models have trended further west today, and so we could be looking at tropical storm force winds in Cape Hatteras as early as late Tuesday night into a very early Wednesday morning. So please keep that in mind, that additional shifts to the west here could mean all the difference between yes and no to tropical storm force winds and yes or no to tropical storm force winds in Bermuda. Although Bermuda is probably going to get some kind of winds because the wind field is going to be extremely large with this. Now, here's a look at the latest NHC update from the National Hurricane Center, and we can see all these letter M's here on your screen indicate major hurricane intensity. And now we're looking at a major hurricane all the way through the entire forecast period because of how gradual weakening is going to be. But given the fact that Erin is exceptionally powerful and is defining all forecasts right now, I would not be surprised if this is a bit slower to weaken, at least over the next 3 days. And it is very possible that this could remain a high echelon Category 4 hurricane all the way up until Tuesday afternoon or even Tuesday night on approach here very close to Bermuda. Now, because of the cone of uncertainty is well to the right of any land masses here, that does not mean that the Carolina coast will or won't see tropical storm force winds, because again, a growing wind field here would mean that tropical storm force winds are not out of the question for Cape Hatteras in the next 4 to 5 days. And it's also worth noting that there are now tropical storm watches out for the Turks and Caicos Islands here by Monday morning and by Monday afternoon because of the close approach here and the larging or growing wind field with Erin, as it remains a very intense, powerful Category 4 and 5 hurricane. So with that being said, please take this hurricane very seriously, as it has now made another jog to the west, which could indicate another bout of intensification. That seems to be the trend, that a rapidly strengthening hurricane here tends to deviate a little bit to the west, not really taking into consideration with that beta. This could be a short-term wobble right now, but given the fact that it has lost or has stopped gaining latitude is very, very concerning. And again, every little move that the system makes is going to mean a whole lot. But anyways, if you did find today's tropical weather outlook and discussion on major hurricane devastating Erin. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't been here before and you do find these very helpful, detailed, informative, and life-saving. Subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon to get latest notifications and updates here every time I do have a tropical weather outlook and discussion on a daily basis, including live streaming coverage on any hurricane or tropical storm if it threatens your area. And also, be sure to like and leave a comment in the section below this video. But otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with you more tonight with another update, perhaps on Major Hurricane Erin.